This is a country where 10% of the population has been trafficked. After the fall of communism in 1991, a severe economic collapse led to half of the entire adult working population leaving the country in search of work. We found that as people were abandoning the country, the children were just being left behind. This created a massive social orphan crisis. Many of these desperate children were winding up in orphanages where corruption runs rampant. We talked to investigative journalist Victor Malarick about this. He spent years in Eastern Europe documenting this crisis.
The serious problem here is that so many directors of orphanages and assistant directors of orphanages know that these girls are going to age out, and they tell traffickers who are waiting at the gates. But no one cares about the orphan, because no one knows.
We actually had a chance to meet up with a girl named Anka from a safe house for victims of human trafficking, and she explained what was happening from the inside.
Și spuneți o sumă mare de bani să grămădim și îmi spuneți la fete că dacă voi vreți să sară, să ieșiți undeva, să vă distrați, să spuneți că eu știu băieți care eu știu mulți băieți care, da, să plătească și să-și n-ați va atingă, poate să fie bine. Și pe urmă, Oleg a aflat că chestiile este, că vin fete. Asta, după cât am aflat, eu i-a dat numărul lui Vasea, că eu am aflat că nu suntem de la internat, fără părinți și nimeni n-a știut călăcat.
The sad reality, particularly for young women or these young girls in orphanages, is they have no one. They existed in the institution. But once they leave the institution, they go into some kind of vortex and no one knows what happens to them. She's gone. She's disappeared. And you never see them again.
What we saw was that traffickers were setting up employment agencies to target these girls with false promises of legitimate work.
They probably have dancing jobs in restaurants, waitresses, or maids. Want to believe this. They need to believe this because they're desperate.
Barbie s-a comportat foarte frumos. Pe urmă, el odată ne-a întrebat pe noi dacă nu vrem să plecăm în Moscova. Și noi l-am întrebat să lucrăm acolo, el lucrează, păzește un magazin, dar noi să lucrăm în Tudesc, nu știu, să lucrăm noi în magazin acolo. Da, ca vânzătoare și-o. Dar nu-mi trebuiau bani, duci pe mine și mă ajuta și-mi trebuia la examen. M-am gândit, poate și bine, dacă eu nu-i prinde să nu plece de prost. Dar eu tot timpul, eu am întrebat să-mi chiar pe dânsul, eu zic, vai, tu n-ai de gând acolo să mă duci și să mă adins de el și cu tine. Adică fetele astea lucrează acolo și n-avea să spui că ceva se întâmplă sau... Să ia să placă acolo să vezi. Că din vorbim. Și chiar m-am gândit că așa, eu vreau să-mi fac viața foarte știu.
Everybody wants a better life for themselves, so they sell you a better life. Oftentimes they come pouring in, unaware of the hell that they're going to be entering. Other times, they'll just look at a young woman and say, we want her. We know she's not going to come of her own free will, so they'll abduct her.
Да, я сначала согласилась, но это не передумала. Дело в том, что если это было так, когда я им сказала, что я передумала, они сказали, что все хорошо, чтобы я не переживала. После того, как они сказали, что я забыла финансировать в течение 3 дней, пока не разделили. Дали там глубину, питье, там ставили таблетки, не то что таблетки, а лекарства, чтобы я спала и чтобы не шумела. Я в один день пришла в себя и захотела убежать. Они меня как бы ударили. И сказали, если я еще раз буду пытаться как-то это сделать, то они знают, что с ними делать.
If a girl would try to scream and shout or something like that, I know that I would do my utmost to shut her up. You just think of how much money this girl can make, and you don't care what she needs to go through in order to get it.
Organized crime is just anarchy. They don't recognize any authority whatsoever, any enforcement authority. They're a law unto themselves.
Since it's mafia, they know before you walk into that room and start seeing with your eyes how is it operated. They know where you live. They know where your parents work. They know if you have children. They know about your sisters, your brothers. They know everything about you. They don't leave nothing to chance. They're stone cold people. No emotions. You have to be like that if you want to do something in this world.
If they don't like you, they don't just kill you. They don't kill your wife, children, your brothers, your sisters. Sometimes they let you live. And that's the way they work around the world. It's all an issue of fear and intimidation.
Напротив Шинген Треп, я узнала документы, написала до Синджан. Шлю донес, что нам просто был следующий девайсик, все трезвый магазин, даже трезв фетель, латрас. Такой спад. Шлю на дому куту.
These young women were abducted or tricked and brought to what they call breaking ground houses.
What are the breaking grounds? Could you describe that? What does that mean?
The breaking grounds are apartments and houses out of sight where the women and girls are brought to be what they call seasoned for the profession of prostitution. They are brought into these rooms and they are broken. Their bodies are broken, their spirits are broken, their souls are broken.
Мы ждем, что пойдем на них, ждем коммуникацию с этим, что спинец, это как бы спасть душевно, мы только шанс на кубутоншку бой. Ну, это как сказать, для них такая система, что там камеры не пойдем. Мы таким скопом флик, ну, маяка, мы шпион пьяный, может, если больше не осталось, что даже не скэпу, то канал вот здесь не главасит, и граб не могут доходить, вот таким кажется.
Sometimes at 2 o'clock at night, you get a phone call. There will be a car waiting for you in 10 minutes. You never know the location where they keep it. You walk into a room that is set up just like a fashion show. With a stage, you sit, you take your seat, lights go off, lights on the stage turn on. The girls walk on the stage, take their clothes off, and start moving around, just like a fashion show. And knowing that when this girl is on stage, that guy already has the next 2 years of her life planned. Sometimes the guy that buys them demands to test the merchandise. Nobody cares about these girls. They turned into an object. Just like you go into the market and you buy yourself a pair of underwear, you go into a different kind of market and you buy yourself a woman. It's hard for the first time or the second time, but you just get to a point where you just say, it's good money.
The girls explained to us how they were transported through these highly sophisticated networks that involved document forgers, smugglers, border officials, taxi cab drivers, all the way down to new owners awaiting them at their destination.
These guys, they take your passport. And these guys, they lock them in a room where they eat, sleep, have sex, everything in the same room. They get treated like dogs, worse than dogs, because they take their dogs out 3 times a day.
What happens if one of these girls wants to escape?
If she gets caught by the pimp, most probably she'll get a good beat up, stay in bed for about a week, and continue to work prostitution.
How do you run away? How does a woman who is from a small little farming village in Moldova finally finds herself in Berlin, doesn't speak German, but has known that in the entire time that she has been trafficked, there were immigration officials, there were border guards, there were customs officials and police officers all getting their hands greased with payoffs.
Fata, după câte am auzit de acolo, a fost legată, odată încercat să fug și a fost dus în pădure de niște băieți și o legată de copac cu pielea goală. Și o legată de copac și o băteau joc de bună sate acolo. Și întâmplător s-o dat drumul, o fugit de acolo la dâns și a început să legi tras și era cu pielea așa. Și mașina s-a oprit și o luat și o dus înapoi la aeroport, patru în ochi. Și tot mă uit sau mă stau mai mult între lume să mă țin, cât timp eu nu vezi. Mă mărești, chiar că stau aici, eu tot timp stau cu frică, că nu găsesc și... Da, e tare.
We couldn't fathom what a girl must go through that endures being trafficked. But we met up with a psychologist and longtime anti-trafficking advocate, Dan Allender, to get insight.
You must understand that exploited women are part of systems, mafias, pimps, control, again, manipulation. And the core of that is to break down further any sense of human dignity. It is a form not only of dehumanization, but it literally is bestial and making a woman into an animal.
So when you see these young women on the side streets of big capital cities like Paris and Milan and London and New York, what you see is a woman in total submission. She's going to listen to her master. She will never cross him. And what we see when we look at these women is the gaudy clothes, the cheap makeup, the stiletto heels, the come-hither smiles, and we just write them off as whores, prostitutes that are not worth a moment of our pity or a moment of any thought.
One of the things that really amazed us over the course of our travels is that we saw Eastern European girls everywhere we went, from Israel to Turkey, Dubai, Southeast Asia, back in the US. We saw that they were being exported all over the planet to be used in prostitution.
To understand the connection between prostitution and human trafficking, we met with Melissa Farley. She's a clinical and research psychologist who's studied prostitution for the past 2 decades.
Yes, there's some trafficking into agricultural and domestic labor. Most trafficking, however, is for the purpose of prostitution. And so you always have to look at prostitution. And it's a mystery to me why people don't look for trafficking victims at all of the places where we know prostitution is happening. In strip clubs, in massage parlors, in escort prostitution. That's where they are.
We wanted to follow the path of a girl who was sold into prostitution, so we traveled to Amsterdam, which is the most famous legal market for prostitution anywhere in the world. arrived in Amsterdam, our contact took us on a boat tour through the canals of the red light district. Just to see hundreds of these girls for sale in windows was a totally bizarre phenomenon.
I had to cross through an alleyway here in the red light district, and it's a little bit of a shady situation because I do not like video cameras and any type of camera in this particular area, so hope I'm gonna be okay here. Thanks, I'm gonna turn it off.
We were able to track down a prostitution window owner named Slim. He'd been working in the red light district for a couple decades, and we were able to talk to him about what was going on there.
This is the operation or the sexual, what he said. The customer can wash himself here, the girl there, and here here are the beds. Normally they got towels for me, bed and sleep, and here's the panic button. The first time when I walk in here, I was also walking with my mouth open, but after a couple of years, it's normal.
For you, it's a business.
Yeah, usual business. You call company and then you ask if you the favorite type what you like, if you want dark or brown. You ask it and the girl come to you. It's like you order a pizza or something like that. You can compare it.
What type of girls are there that work here?
At the moment we have a lot of girls from East Europe, and especially from Hungary, Bulgaria, Romania. But we are allowed to rent rooms to 27 countries.
Most of the girls we had seen in the windows were from Eastern Europe. We couldn't help wondering how many of them had actually been trafficked here. When we tried talking with them, the only words they knew in English were how to give a price for sexual services. But we talked with Denise, who was formerly sold behind the windows for 9 years.
She's selling her body, she gets her money for it. That's what she wants. So if she will have a problem, it's her own fault. That's what most people believe. She's prostituting, it's her own choice.
Is it really a choice?
No. But even there's not even one girl who really wants to sell her body. All the time, they have to put on this act and have to watch us at the same time. For the people who are watching them, to give their money away. Because most of them have pimps, and they all have a story. Every girl who is working here has her own story.
Denise was lured into prostitution by a guy who was pretending to be romantically interested in her. And we found that this was something that was common, not just in Amsterdam, but everywhere prostitution happens.
I promised myself, if I will meet a lover boy, I make sure that he will never catch me, because I'm not that stupid. But I fell in love with him and started to live together with him. But only because of the fact that he told me, you're so special, you're so beautiful, I love you so much. Until the moment that he's telling you that he has some some financial difficulties and that it's maybe possible by prostituting your body to make these little problems go away.
Why do you think the girls want to work here in the red light district?
A lot of them do that for economic way. They need the money because at the moment they cannot find work, not normal. In normal work at the moment it's also difficult to find a job at the moment.
The girls who are forced to work in prostitution, they don't earn any money, none at all. So all the money that's earned in this business is profit for the criminals behind it.
From one day to another day, waking up, go to my window, make sure that there were people around me who were watching after me, having between 20 or 30 customers every day, from morning till evening late, getting beat up by him at the moment that I had not enough money, thinking about getting away from him, escaping, thinking at the same time, if I would jump out his window, I would break my leg.
You care about the girls that work here?
Yes, I care very much about the girls. They have alarm in the room, they have my private number, if they have my number, so they can call me if there is something strange or before there is something, before there are problems, they can always call me.
So in the legal brothels, where they do have protections, they're told, whatever you do, keep your hand very close at hitting the panic button. Really? I thought this was a safe brothel. Why do you need a panic button?
Is it a safe working environment for them?
Here, especially in the windows, is safe.
There was a girl, I think, stabbed a couple doors down here recently. What happened there?
De politie is still, hoe zeg je, de politie is nog steeds aan het is still investigating this case.
Is there organized crime here in Amsterdam?
I don't want to say that everybody who walk here is clean. I cannot say that.
The mayor of Amsterdam, Joe Cohen, has recently closed down half of the red light area in Amsterdam. The reason for this, he said, we can't control organized crime. Now this is a system of legal prostitution that cannot control organized crime. He's right. You cannot control organized crime. In fact, legal prostitution is like setting out a welcome mat for pimps and johns. There is no difference between legal and illegal prostitution. Pimps and traffickers are in both locations, and these are not guys who are interested in the normal social values. These are thugs and criminals, whether they're called legal pimps or illegal pimps, they're the same people.
Don't make the mistake to think that you see a legal business, because the light and the circumstances make it have the effect that it looks as a legal business and the girls are nice to see, but when you look in their eyes and make contact with them, then you can find out that lots of girls want to stop this business and want to go back to the family and back to normal life.
Why haven't the institutions of government been able to effectively stem the tide of this injustice in our world today?
Money, and more money. Mafias run human trafficking. Many of the traffickers are prior drug dealers. When you sell, as one trafficker told me, if I sell a key of cocaine, I sell it one time. If I sell a woman, I get 7 years worth of work minimum. I sell her time again and again and again. So in that sense, it is a business monetary matter. Well, no mafia anywhere in the world can exist without fundamental government support. So where you're looking at the interplay of corruption, of governments, whether it is high officials, whether it is police, law enforcement, again, this is an issue that we just can't be naive about.
Seeing how girls were brought into the sex trade in Europe was a major wake-up call. But we also wanted to know how girls were winding up in prostitution in other parts of the world. And so we headed to Southeast Asia, which we knew was a hot spot for prostitution.
The first thing that strikes you when you get to Thailand is the beauty of the country. But the next thing that you notice is that prostitution is a major part of their society. In fact, there was one government-sponsored ad that read, "The one fruit of Thailand, more delicious than durian, is its young women." We traveled all across the nation, from Chiang Mai to Bangkok to Pattaya, down to Phuket, and we talked with scores of girls in prostitution who all shared a similar story. Most of them had come from the rural regions of Thailand, and pressured to provide for their parents, they went into the big cities in search of work. The problem is that the Thai government doesn't give these girls citizenship, making it nearly impossible to get a legitimate job. And so they get recruited to work in massage parlors, karaoke clubs, girly bars, no citizenship necessary.
Well, I totally knew that a lot of them weren't there because they wanted me. Okay, there were a very, very, very small percentage that were, but then usually because of their financial situation, they were there. I went to bed with over 500 girls in 2 years. And because they were there, and they said, "I'm helping my family. I'm helping my family." Their family doesn't respect them no more, they're ashamed of them, but they still want the money.
คือว่าเราต้องการเงินที่จะช่วยในเรื่องของครอบครัวให้น้องไม่ว่าจะเป็นน้องหรือว่าจะเป็นที่ให้เขากินมีอยู่อย่างแบบใช้จ่ายในแต่ละวันอย่างเพียงพอแต่ในขณะนั้นไม่ได้คิดถึงตัวเองไม่ได้คิดถึงตัวเองเลย
So what they're going to do? If they're working in the factory, they get a 4,000 baht a month. They have a 2 kids. What they're going to do? I asked them what they're going to do. So better to be coming down to sell them something else. They get more money, and they have a more beautiful life.
For those indulging in the illicit pleasures, Thailand is like this sexual utopia. But for those who are trapped in the industry, nothing could be further from the truth.
ส่วนมากก็ก็จะจับตามเนื้อจับตัวอะไรน่าจะรู้สึกว่าเราเป็นสินค้ามากกว่า
Oh, it should be, yeah. Every time when I'm sitting in the bar, they're quite happy. So it should be they like it. That's why they come and sitting around everywhere. It should be they like it. It should be they like it.
I think initially we had a very narrow conception of what constitutes human trafficking. But being in Thailand, we began to see a broader injustice occurring in the sex industry. These girls hadn't been abducted or physically forced into prostitution. Yet their social conditions had virtually removed personal choice from the equation. We met up with Lauren Bethel to talk about this. She's a known expert in the field and worked with girls in the sex trade in Thailand for 14 years.
I've defined trafficking as the exploitation of vulnerability in any situation. It's the exploitation and vulnerability of economic dysfunction. It's the exploitation and vulnerability of sexual abuse. It's the exploitation of the vulnerability of girls with low self-esteem or boys with low self-esteem. It's trafficking is simply an exploitation of vulnerability.
More often than not, you don't need a gun. You don't need to physically drag someone from point A to point B to control, exploit, and use them in prostitution. You simply need to take advantage of the factors that already compel women into prostitution.
This was really a defining moment for us, where we realized that victims of the sex industry extended beyond those who had just been trafficked in the classic sense to all girls whose vulnerabilities had destined them for prostitution.
Some of the people, they come in looking for the young girls, it means they'll be in a village. You know, they'll be in a very poor village and pay the money from the family and get it from the village, but it's not. This is the way the situation is mostly some few country in the village. If someone they be in a village and they like it and they're gonna talk to with the family because they don't understand any situations, no English, nothing. So just with I like your daughter, I just pay them maybe 100,000 baht, so they can buy and yeah. Let's say it's a buy from the parents.
The way Devaj so casually consulted us on how to buy a child from their parents made us wonder if anyone could just buy a child for sex. To investigate this, we went to a small village in the neighboring country of Cambodia, where we heard child prostitution was happening.
When we drove into the city today, we were coming down the street and we actually saw a pedophile.
Hey buddy! Hey buddy!
Older, probably in his 50s, and we were able to track him down, to chase him down, and to warn him not to come back to this city.
Do not come back to this city ever again. You're going to get in trouble.
Standing face to face with this man, we were struck by the reality of the situation, that there were literally people flying from across the world to come buy children for sex. We met with Don Brewster, the director of Agape International Missions, and he's been on the front lines of the battle against child prostitution in Cambodia since 2005.
We did some work, some undercover work for IJM in a karaoke bar in Siem Reap. We went in, 200 to 300 girls waiting for us when we get in there, big numbers on their chest. You just pick whatever girl you want. And it's a weird feeling. It's almost like the girls don't know how to feel. Like, please, oh God, don't pick me. Versus, if you don't pick me, how am I going to have any money? How am I going to take care of my family? You know, I mean, it must be hell that they have to go through. But you walk into the place and the manager comes up to you and he says, I want you to know, when in the karaoke room, you can do anything you want to the girl. I mean, you can touch her, you can kiss her, whatever you want to do, but you can't have sex before you negotiate a price. Now you get into this karaoke room, gigantic flat screen TV, a high-tech karaoke system with over 2,000 songs in English, 6 cordless mics, beautifully appointed, private bath, 80 rooms like that in this place. This guy owns 8 places like this. That's 16 to 2,400 girls. And we estimated, and we're conservative, that at least a third of them were underage. So you choose your girl, you go to the room, and a woman comes in to police the room. But people would think she comes to protect the girls. She comes to make sure the girls are going after the men. That they're cuddling up to the men, that they're getting the guys
to want to have sex, to pay for the big bucks for sex. So we get ready to leave, and I can pay with my credit card. Okay? So you pay with your credit card, and here's your receipt that you get. Tiger beer, $4. Bunch of grapes, $5. Karaoke girl for 1 hour, do whatever you want to her, $3. Well, we're getting ready to leave, right? And one of the girls with one of the other guys doesn't want to go. And so she starts running away. Now we've already paid. She starts to run away. The manager goes, gets her. I mean, literally, as close as you can get to without beating her, screaming at her that she needs to go with us and do whatever we say and smile all the time. So my wife and the counselors talked with me and said, we have a place you can get out of this. We have a place where you can come and you can make sure you get healthy and you'll get good food, you'll get an education. We can help you to have a brand new life. And of the 3 of the girls that we had just wept. They think that there was that opportunity. There was only one thing we needed to do to be able to take them. They needed their mothers to say it was okay. We called all 3 moms. All 3 moms said no. All 3 mothers said no. We're not gonna. They can't do it. We need the money. We told them we'll give you money. We'll actually give you a loan to start your own business. We'll provide all the things you need with it. We'll provide you training and everything you need to start your own business, and your daughter can go get a great education, and when she's done, she can earn way more money, and she'd be in a way better situation. Even after all that, all 3 mothers said no. And so we had to drive these girls back to the karaoke bar.
I just can't imagine what that must have been like. Could you speak into that or explain that, what that was like?
I don't think so. I mean, I can. I have 3 daughters and 5 granddaughters, and my granddaughters are almost the age of the girls that we took back. I can't explain it. I can tell you this, that I can't get the picture of those girls' faces out of my mind still today, and I don't imagine that I ever will.
We could see that poverty had been an underlying factor driving girls into the sex industry. But what we didn't understand is how a parent could sell their own child into sex slavery. So we talked to Helen Swarm. She's been investigating and combating trafficking in Cambodia since 1999.
So we carried out a research, and many people said, the reason that those communities are selling their daughters is because they're the poorest. It's about poverty. So we said, well, let's go in there and really see what's happening in those communities. But we saw in some of these communities, it wasn't actually the poorest families that were selling their daughters. It could be some of the families that wanted to sell them for more luxury items like mobile phones, televisions, that kind of thing.
But across the way, there's 6 men that sit there every day, smoke cigarettes, gamble, and drink beer all day long. From 10 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, that's all they do. And so how can they afford to do that? Because they all traffic their daughters. They'll sit there, they could work, but they don't work. And they traffic their daughters every single day.
You know what the reality is? The reality is about 80 to 90% of families are selling their daughters, not 40 to 50%. So we were seeing that what was emerging was a culture of complicity in selling, which was the most frightening phenomenon that we uncovered.
ពេលហ្នឹងខ្ញុំអស់កំមុំហើយណាមួយខ្ញុំឃើញម៉ាខ្ញុំហើយនៅក្នុងផ្ទះខ្ញុំហើយវាទៅរកស៊ីចឹងណាឃើញគេមានលុយមានអីហើយខ្ញុំក៏ដាក់ចិត្តទៅធ្វើចឹងដើម្បីឲ្យយកលុយនោះឲ្យម៉ាខ្ញុំ
What began to happen in communities, if a woman was expecting a baby, if she had a baby girl, they would say to her, you've scored the jackpot. It's okay because you've had a girl, and now if you have financial challenges in your life, you've got this security asset. And if you need to, you can sell her. And people would say, well, they can't love their children then. How would any mother, be complicit in the selling of her child? She must hate her child. She must not think anything of her child.
We had a girl in our center, aftercare center. His family lived here. And so we bring him back for family visits, a supervised family visit. And when I would come with her, she and her mom you would swear her mother loves her deeply. I mean, that she would weep when she saw her, she'd hug her and kiss her, but she trafficked her every day before she was rescued. And I talked to these 6 pastors individually, these 6 Vietnamese pastors, and I said, I just don't understand it. How can that be? How can you tell if the mom really loves the daughter? And all 6 of them individually said to me, well, was she trafficked locally or away? If she was trafficked away, that means they don't really love her. But if they traffic her locally where they get to see her, that means they love her. I mean, how can you understand that?
Buổi trưa cho nên các con đi làm bạn nên phải đến thời gian xem cho xin được. Và bạn lắm. Về prope về để nhóm trên tư về để nhóm được từng đánh mùi chứ cái to play thì do tới tam chất hay cái áo lôi hay không chân nhóm của bạn khang hay khi chọc tam việc vẫn đánh mọi bên chừng rừng.
We knew that the mothers, as much as the fathers, were responsible for selling their daughters. We also knew that those daughters, for them, it was about an honor relationship with their parents. So because their parents had brought them into the world, they then had a debt honor to pay back to their parents for bringing them into the world. So we were seeing that some of these girls that were approaching adolescence were actually grooming themselves, knowing that they were going to be sold. They'd seen it happen to families that were around them, so they knew what was happening. So they would groom themselves because they wanted to honor their parents. For them, if the parents could get more money for them, wouldn't that be a greater sense of honor for them as a daughter?
If we walked around and I pointed to the girls, I don't know if I could point to 10 girls that aren't being trafficked. The truth is, it's not, again, look at that little girl out there. If she was your little girl, would you sell her? If you didn't have enough food, would you say, oh, I can afford to get rid of her so I can have food? You wouldn't do it for food, you wouldn't do it for medicine, right? So I mean, that whole idea that poverty is an issue really takes a big leap. How could that really be an issue that you choose your daughter? You choose to sacrifice your daughter.
Before we left Swaipak, we gathered children from the village together to teach them some songs and dances. And right as we're doing this, Pimp pulls up on a moped, and he's angry because he needs to get one of these children out for a client who had come into town. And our host explained to us that most of the very same children that we were singing and dancing with were currently being trafficked.
people assume that girls are sold into prostitution by their parents in other people's countries. I came across a young woman in a legal Nevada brothel who was sold into a legal brothel by her parents when she was 16. This is one of the more emotionally disturbed people I've ever encountered. And in all honesty, I considered kidnapping her on the spot, but I thought that might not help. She felt so worthless about herself. The self-loathing and the hatred was so intense that it was heartbreaking, frankly. And her abusive perpetrator parents were raising her 2 children, and not only was she sending them the money she earned in the legal brothel, but her parents were using the 2 children as income generators for the public welfare system. This was another wake-up call for me, that the same abuse that we think happens in someone else's country is happening right here at home.
In our travels, we met girls who were exploited through their orphan status, through poverty, through statelessness, and even by their very own parents. And while most see karaoke clubs, or girly bars, or massage parlors, or even brothels, for these girls, they were nothing more than prison cells. But back in the US, we saw an entirely new face of this issue, and that is girls drawn into the sex industry by the allure of glamour and prosperity.
I got off the plane and I looked at the strip and I was like, oh my gosh, there's famous people in those casinos. And I'm gonna meet somebody that's a millionaire and I'm gonna get married to him and I'm gonna take all their money.
And I watched the movie Pretty Woman and I was like, well, gosh, look at her. You know, she's beautiful and she's making money and, you know, she's meeting guys and she fell in love with this guy and she's living in this nice hotel suite and has everything she wants and she's falling in love. Man, I need to become a hoe. That's what I thought. So that's what I did.
To understand the draw of glamorized prostitution, we met with Annie Lobert. Annie spent 16 years as a high-class call girl in Las Vegas.
I sold my body to a Japanese man. So, and it was real easy to do, by the way. People ask me, what did you feel like? Empowered. I felt like, wow, if I can do this with every guy I meet, I'm gonna be a millionaire pretty soon. It was like, woo, Pandora's box, like Lord of the Rings, putting on that ring and just going, oh, power, money, you know, and I thought all my dreams could come true. I can go to college. I always wanted to go to college, couldn't afford it.
So I chased that lifestyle. I wanted the glamour, I wanted everything that came along with it, and I thought that it was the cool thing to do because everybody else was doing it. My mom was a prostitute. My grandma was actually a prostitute. So I just thought, you know, this is what I'm destined to do. This is what my life is supposed to be.
You go out there and you walk around casinos and you look for single guys or a group of guys kind of just walking by themselves, looking lonely, and you just, anything to start a conversation. Hey, do you know what time it is? You know, anything. And, you know, eventually, you know, get into the subject of, hey, you want some sex?
A lot of ladies like to fornicate, like to have sex, you know, just like us guys. And so, you know, just to make a little humor here, I mean, if a woman wanted to pay me and I was attracted to her, I would, off the record, I wouldn't mind doing that too.
When you first start doing it, it's exciting, it's glamorous, it's like, wow, I got power. And you get stung eventually, whether it be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Once you get beat up a couple times and threatened with your life, and you almost lose your life.
I experienced nothing like Pretty Woman. It's totally different. The real world, it's totally different.
It's all an act. In the course of my nearly 30 years as a prostitute, I got to know hundreds of prostitutes, and I can honestly say I don't know one person who enjoyed it.
We talked with Helena Evans, who gave us a sobering glimpse behind the veneer of prostitution. She was on the streets at 14 and wound up in prostitution for the next 26 years.
One particular night, I was in a car and we was going out into the country. We were supposed to be going to my house, and then he took a detour. I said, "Where are you going?" And he wouldn't answer me. And I thought, "Oh, this is pretty weird, you know." I said, "Listen, stop the car, because I'm going to get out." He said, "You're not going anywhere. There's only one place you're going tonight, and that's hell." And I could tell the way he said it, that he was really serious. And I tried to open the door, and I couldn't open the door. So I started kicking him, you know, because he was driving, and so I started kicking him, and I was trying to get my foot over to press the lock to open my door. In the end, I ended up opening my door, and we were in the middle of nowhere. He was a big guy, you know, I'm a woman, and we started this wrestling. And honestly, it's awful when you know there's somebody who really wants to kill you. And I could feel my strength leaving me. And because this is why I was punching him, then he put his hands around my neck, and I began to get all dizzy. And I thought I was going to die, and I really cried out to God. And thank goodness, this car came along. And this was an absolutely deserted road. Normally a car would not come along. And this guy just drove off. He was later sent to prison. But that, most of us have stories like that.
I've been held hostage at gunpoint, raped, robbed, strangled, beaten up, everything by customers. So they're not all good.
Did you ever feel an element of fear running these girls?
Like they were afraid? Yeah, several times I would feel that they were definitely afraid of what they were involved in, but they just had to do it. It's like a job. You know, most people don't like their job, but they have to go do it to pay their bills. So it became like a job to them, something they had to do.
Even the people who promote prostitution will put out helpful fact sheets on how to avoid getting killed. They don't say it exactly that way, but they put out a fact sheet that says, well, when you go into a hotel room when you're servicing a John, drop something on the floor and kick it under the bed so you can look under the bed and see if there's a gun or handcuffs there. Don't wear a scarf, because that can be used to strangle you. Don't wear super high heels to an escort out call because you can't run fast enough. Now, this is information coming from people that are promoting prostitution as a good job.
One of the stats we dug up from prostitution research and education was that women in prostitution had a mortality rate that was 40 times higher than the national average. One predominant fact began to stand out to us. Peril is a basic fact of prostitution. But we wondered why anyone would endure the same abuses day after day when they could simply choose to leave prostitution at any time.
Why is it so difficult for girls to get out?
Because of their pimps. It's so difficult for girls to get out of it because they're brainwashed. And it's all that they've ever known. They feel like there's no help. Because there really isn't no help out there.
A woman generally doesn't get onto the streets without an ally, often called a pimp. And that person is controlling her, shaping, often providing her with drugs, but also with violence.
Every time that I got out of pocket, I got beat down for it. And we're talking like brutally beat, where I couldn't work.
I woke up to a gun being cocked in my mouth, you know, and it just scared me so bad. He had me call my family and say goodbye to them. And then, you know, I went back to him after a while because I felt like, you know, that's just who I'm supposed to be with. That's supposed to be, you know, this is what my life is.
No woman is on the streets because she just likes sex and or wants money. This is a system of utter manipulation. It's a system of exploitation, manipulation, threat, violence, but all fundamentally under the fear and deep sense of shame that I have no value.
He knew I was leaving a couple different times, and he'd come home and do this, I call it psychopath warfare, to get me to think that he was gonna kill me. Put guns in my mouth, put a gun in my head, and said, I'm gonna do it, I'm in love with you. He would say, I'm so in love with you. If you leave me, I'll kill myself. And he'd put the gun in my head. And it's like, oh, no, don't kill yourself, I love you. Please don't do it to me. And just the games, the psychological games were just incredible. And when you're in love with someone, you fall for that. And some people say, well, you're stupid. No, really. When you're in it at the time, it makes sense.
You have what's called the Stockholm Syndrome, which implies that a victim can eventually come to identify with her captor when you've been taken captive. And your very survival depends on, in one sense, the care, loosely used, that word, the care of your captor. Then in some ways you bond to that captor, even if they at times literally torture you, violate you, demean your dignity. They're your only source of life.
She had a pimp who would say to her, unpredictably, down. And she would have to lay down in a certain spot in the room, just like a dog, until he told her she could get up. There's no reason for that except to demonstrate to the girl that he has absolute control over her. So that if he knows he can tell her down, he certainly can tell her, get out there, do not come back until you've got $1,000 cash in your hand.
I mean, the goal of the trafficker is to break you down so that you are under his control. That kind of power over a person leads you to a point where your only basis of survival feels like dissociation. And dissociation really is a flight from reality. It is a disconnection from engagement with the world around you. For the person who's been traumatized to levels of almost concentration camp cruelty, there is no way but to go more and more and more to the interior and to leave the exterior world for other people to control. It's almost as if the soul dwindles and literally gets more and more and more invisible.
Other techniques of mind control include the creation of a part of the personality that prostitutes, so that there might be Jeannie, who's the young woman who has a kid at home and girlfriends in high school, and then Veronica is the prostituting part. And because you can't prostitute without splitting part of the self psychologically, that Veronica is deliberately created by pimps. Pimps will say, I'm not talking to Jeannie right now, I want Veronica. Come on, get out here, Veronica. And so Veronica has a different look on the face, different clothes, different behaviors. And the child splits off that part of the self that has to prostitute for 6 or 8 or 10 hours.
And as a consequence, it's usually a 6 to 8 year period of time before she has AIDS, another sexually transmitted disease, or is literally killed. So it's not a long life these young girls have, but by the time they become 20, 21, 22, they are jaded beyond all comprehension.
I've got friends right now that don't even want to